Hey guys, it's Trina. I have not done a reading wrap up in quite a while. I haven't done one yet for 2018. So basically, this is my wrap up for the first quarter of 2018, January, February, and March. I'm gonna just cut it there. I'll do April later. But I haven't been able to do wrap ups this year yet because I just found that with a newborn, it was very difficult to find the time to sit down and do it every single month, because these videos are very large videos. They take a lot of time for me with editing and filming and everything. It was just something that I needed to kind of cut out of my schedule and just have one less obligation when it came to my channel. And now it's been 3 months and I have way too many books to cover. It's been a while since I read some of these, so I'm sure that some of my thoughts aren't as fresh and I won't have a ton to say about several of them. So I used to start out doing my wrap-ups by having a TBR check-in, and I don't have one of those for you guys this time because I have not been making TBRs this year. But if you love TBR check-ins, I have done a few videos of channel check-ins where I went back and checked in with the stuff I said I was going to read the first year that I started my channel. I am behind on making those as well, but they do exist if you missed the TBR check-in portion. Since I have quite a few books to cover, let me insert a couple of little statistic things to just share with you guys how some of these books break down. In January, I read 3 books. In February, I read 7 books. In March, I read 6 books. And over those 3 months, there were 2 books that I did not finish. And the way they break down by format is I read 4 print books, I listened to 12 audiobooks, and I read 2 ebooks. I think that I'm just going to go through these in the order that I read them. At the end, I'll wrap up by telling you guys what my favorite reads in this batch were. I started out the year by reading Into the Bright Unknown by Carson. This is the 3rd book in her Gold Seer trilogy. The plot of this individual book is basically an old Western heist, and despite that being a pretty awesome sounding premise, I was pretty bored by this book. I just was underwhelmed by this one, I guess, and I just truly feel like neither of the sequels in this trilogy ever recaptured the appeal that the first book in the trilogy had for me. I don't really feel fulfilled by finishing out this series, to be honest. Then I read One Dark Throne by Kendare, the 2nd book in her 3 Dark Crowns series. I really enjoyed this book. All of my theories from book 1 did not play out how I thought they would, but I really loved seeing more of these characters, more of this world. I love the way that the storylines have come together, and the ending of this one has given me some high hopes for where the next book is going. Like, we're going to see totally new stuff, and so I definitely think that there is more to the story to be told, and I really am anticipating that. I just have really enjoyed the 2 books in the series so far. I also finished my reread of the Harry Potter books via their audiobooks. The US version's narrated by Jim Dale. So I read Half-Blood Prince and Deathly Hallows. There was like a month between me finishing these 2 books, but I wanted to talk about them together because it's a series I have loved re-exploring this beloved series that I'm very familiar with in a new to me format, which were the audiobooks, because I'd never listened before. And as I listened to each and every book in this series, like, each book became my new favorite, and then I listened to the next one and it was my new favorite. Like, it was just a delight to re-experience this world in a new way. I read Little Monsters by Kara Thomas, which is a standalone YA mystery. I did really enjoy this one. This one was very readable. I feel like I flew through it. It wasn't my favorite mystery that I've read, but I don't think it really did anything wrong. It definitely cast suspicion across many different characters. It had me guessing. I didn't predict it, but it failed to be an over-the-top shock to me. But I still really enjoyed it, really enjoyed reading this, and I definitely want to check out more by this author now. This is also set during winter. It was a very snowy atmosphere, and I read this one in early February. It was still cold where I'm from, so this is definitely a very wintry, atmospheric book if you're looking for something like that to pick up. Then I reread Ready Player One by Ernest, Cline. I decided to reread this one because I read this 3 or 4 years ago. I really loved it at the time, and I've heard so many negative opinions and reviews and criticisms of this book that are completely valid since then, and I've wondered if my opinion on the book would change. And then the movie coming out, I started seeing trailers, and a lot of the stuff in the trailers did not look familiar to me whatsoever, so I was like, you know what? people keep recommending the audiobook to me, I will try it. I'm going to do a separate review on the audiobook. I really hope to get back into doing my series of audiobook reviews. I listened to so many audiobooks this year. I really want to talk more about the narration. But anyway, I fully expected my thoughts on this book to change because of a lot of the criticisms that I have heard, but I was surprised that my opinion on the book did not change. I still really enjoyed it, although I can totally see that these criticisms are valid. There's a lot of sexism, there's a lot of nerd gatekeeping, there are some transphobic comments, and another big criticism I always have heard is that the 80s references just like pound you, like they're everywhere, you can't escape them. And although I feel like I did feel that more the first time around, the second time reading it, I felt like the references were less than I had remembered. Like, I felt like I wasn't getting caught up in them. Maybe it was because I was already familiar with the story. I haven't seen the movie yet. I probably will check it out at some point, but you know, I like this for what it is, but it's definitely not a perfect book. Then I read Artemis by Andy Weir. This is an adult sci-fi novel set on the moon, following a citizen of the Moon City who is a smuggler, and she basically finds herself wrapped up in this plot that can threaten the well-being of the entire Moon City. I was highly anticipating this book because I loved The Martian by this author. That's one of my all-time favorite books, and I really disliked Artemis. It was kind of a surprise to me. My biggest complaint of this book is that the female main character did not feel authentic at all. This is one of those instances that you see people like mock on Twitter where a male author just completely gets the female voice wrong. It was very sexualized for no reason whatsoever. If you read The Martian and you hated how much of like a science info dump there was, this book is even worse in my opinion, because with The Martian, that character had a reason to know all of those facts and to explain them. He was a highly specialized astronaut. This character, she's just explained away as like, oh, I have perfect memory and I'm super intelligent. But she has no real reason to know every single thing that she does know. In her one field, maybe she'd know that, but she just seems to know everything about all science and all space stuff, and it just didn't come across as authentic. I was highly disappointed by this book. I read Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. This is a story told in verse, and it is about a main character whose brother has been shot and killed. So to avenge his brother, he grabs his gun, he goes to the neighborhood where this suspect lives, and he boards an elevator to get to his house. And on the elevator, at every single floor, he meets a person that basically influences the decisions he's made to get to this point. I did listen to the audio of this one because it was highly recommended to me. The author himself reads the audiobook, and so you really get like a good feeling of the tone that he intended. I didn't enjoy the ending. I felt like I just needed a little bit more closure. However, then I checked out the physical book from my library because I wanted to kind of flip through it and see the verse. And I reread that final chapter and I feel like I just understood it a little bit better. I'm just not the biggest fan of books in verse, but I understand it better now that I saw the print, if that makes any sense. I reread Beneath the Sugar Sky by Seanan McGuire. I read an arc of this book at the end of last year, right before it came out, and I had listened to the first two books on audio, so that's why I did the reread, because I wanted to experience the audio of this story as well. So these three books are YA portal fantasy, where these characters have found doorways to other realms, they go through them, they've lived there for years, this is like their home, the place that they belong, and then they are kicked back out into the real world, into Earth, and no one really believes where they've been. This is the third book in the series, and it is following the characters from book one, but there are two new characters that are kind of the main characters of this one. This is epic quest that kind of plays with the rules of time, and you go to a world that is just made up completely of candy and sugar. I initially reviewed it, I think in my December or November reading wrap up, so you know, you guys can see that from my initial thoughts. I pretty much feel the same, but I really enjoyed the audio. I liked both formats of this story. The audio versions really complement the storytelling in these books. I read the graphic novel Wires and Nerve Volume 2 Gone Rogue by Marissa Meyer and illustrated by Stephen Gilpin. This is the second one of Aiko's adventures. I think that these graphic novels are fun. I really enjoy seeing the characters again. I think that this format is really fitting to the Lunar Chronicles story, and I would love to have more graphic novels set in this world with these characters, but I definitely liked Volume 1 much more than Volume 2. The entire story arc of Volumes 1 and 2 end in this one in such a simple way, and it's like, why did you just not do that on page 1? Like, the whole story felt pointless. It just could have been not as predictable of a story, I guess. And I just really did not like how things concluded between Aiko and Kenny. Like, there just wasn't enough. So I was a bit disappointed by this. Then I binge read a duology back to back because I loved these books. It is the In the After duology by Demitria Lunetta. So book 1 is In the After, book 2 is In the End. I listened to the audiobooks of these. This is a YA post-apocalyptic story, and it is about these beings, like these creatures have invaded Earth, and everyone thinks they're aliens, but they eat people, so it's kind of like a mix between aliens and zombies, and they are attracted to sound. So the people who have survived in this world have to be completely quiet, and so the main characters use their own form of sign language. I think book 1 was definitely the best of the two. I don't think that book 2 was necessarily that needed. I didn't like it as much. I think it's more that I just didn't like the particular location of book 2, but this is like my type of story. I love survival stories. I love post-apocalyptic. These books are so under the radar, but you gotta check them out if you like those things. I read The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. This is an adult romance. I got it in my Page Habit box, and it's really cute, really good. It is about a couple of people, a man and a woman, that meet in an elevator because the elevator has lost power, and the guy says, I'm in town for a wedding. It's my ex-girlfriend's wedding. She's marrying my best friend. There's drama there. I'm going alone, but I would love a wedding date. Do you want to come with me and pretend like you're my girlfriend? They go. It's a fake relationship type of setup. It's a multiple point of view book, so you get the points of views from both of them. I really enjoyed that this book got right into it. You get right into the wedding. It doesn't spend a whole ton of time on there, so after that you get to see how things play out. However, I think that it kind of dragged along in the middle a bit unnecessarily because like it got into things so quick and then it just started to feel repetitive. But I really enjoyed it. I loved the characters. Alexa felt like a very real character, and I definitely want to read more by this author. I just think it was a really cute, fluffy, easy read. Very, very readable. I reread Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. This is a YA romance. I kind of want to call it a mystery because I think there's a big mystery element to it, although it's not like someone's dead who did it. It's like the main character has had an email relationship with a boy from his school. Both of these boys are gay, but neither one of them are out, so they haven't told each other who they are. So they go to school together, and the main character is trying to figure out who his crush is. I have read this book twice before, and I decided to listen to the audiobook because that was, you know, new to me format. I wanted to re-experience the story in a new way, and it was fabulous, absolutely fantastic. I love it. I have loved this story from the first time I read it to the third time I've read it. It's just, I love it. It's one of my favorites. I read The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This is a Middle Eastern adult fantasy book about a main character who finds out that she has like magical lineage, basically. There are jinn, and she ends up traveling with one of them to this magical city and becoming intertwined in the royal politics of this place. One thing that caught me off guard is that there are multiple points of views, and that didn't kick in until several chapters in, so it was like just total change of pace. And I did not like the second point of view for a long time because you're just getting to know this city. But once the two storylines met up, I was glad that I had that background information. This is a very long book. I did feel like it dragged at parts. I was a little bit bored at parts, just like wanting things to get on with it. A lot of world building and explanation was happening in this book, so it did feel like the first of a series, just a lot of setup. But the way that things ended did make me excited for where the series is going to go. This is one of those series that I feel like I love the first book, but it was long and a bit intimidating, so by the time book 2 comes out, I feel like I'm going to put it off and then I may never get around to finishing the series. It's one of those types of series, but for what it's worth, I did really, really enjoy this book. The last thing I finished in the first 3 months of this year was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I loved this book so much. I listened to the audio. There are 3 narrators. It's fantastic. Oh my goodness, I really love this. This is an adult book about a movie star, Evelyn Hugo. She's like super famous and now she's older and she decides that she's going to give her life story, her biography, like her tell-all, to this random reporter that seemingly was plucked out of obscurity. She's this amazing actress, but she has a reputation because she's been married so many times and the public has always wanted to hear her story about why did you marry so many people. So she's telling us a story and she answers the burning question of who was the love of your life. As Evelyn tells the story, you do have chapters that like are flashbacks, so there is kind of a historical aspect to it. It covers like Hollywood golden age and stuff. It kind of felt like you were really listening to a real celebrity tell her story. Evelyn Hugo felt like a very real, very genuine character, and I just really, really enjoyed this. It was fantastic. Like, I could not get enough of it. I'm sad that it's over. I would read this book if it had 2,000 pages. Now I want to talk to you guys about the books that I DNF'd. I did not finish these for whatever reason, so I want to talk about why. First was Your One and Only by Adrianne Finlay. This is a 2018 YA debut novel. It's sci-fi about clones. So basically humanity has died out and the only people that live on Earth now are clones that were cloned from like the last 9 people that set out to save civilization or whatever. They have like played with their genetic makeup so much to like pick out certain traits and attributes that they value, but then there is one human that is living among them who still knows things like what love is. That's a big emphasis on this. I read like, I don't know, 3/4 of this book or 2/3 of it. I read a good chunk and I was so bored because things just started repeating themselves. The human character was very violent unnecessarily, and so like just over and over he and this other character would just get into fistfights like over and over for the same reasons, and then the same stuff, like the same consequences would happen each time, and I was just tired of it. I was like, I wanted to read a cool love story, not Fight Club, you know? So I didn't like this. It didn't live up to the premise to me. And it was repetitive, so I quit because at some point I just realized I don't care how things end up. I just don't care. It was not that interesting to me. I also DNF'd Crimson Bound by Rosamund Hodge, which I'm pretty disappointed about because I was really looking forward to this book when it came out like several years ago, and it took me forever to get around to it. This is like a Little Red Riding Hood retelling, but I think it expands on that story so much that it really loses the retelling aspect, so I don't know that I would even call it a retelling. Maybe like one scene was inspired by it. And this is a YA fantasy. I can't even tell you what this book is about because the world is very convoluted. It's like set in a fantasy version of a French court. There's this like creation story. There's this darkness that some characters have, and our main character is one of these darkness people and she has to kill other people. And yeah, see, I don't get it because this was a very, very wordy novel. I think I got about 1/3 of the way through the book and it just felt like nothing was happening. So I grew bored and I kept putting it down, and then when I would try to pick it back up again, I was like so lost. Like it was just over my head. This one just didn't work well for me personally. So that's everything that I read in January, February, and March, and since I kind of did that out of order, I want to just tell you what my favorite books were. I have 3 clear favorites. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, it was amazing. I highly recommend it. In the After by Demitria Lunetta, I was just really enthralled by this book, and One Dark Throne by Kendare. I just really love these characters in this world. These were definitely my favorite of this group. I really love them. Would recommend all of them. So that is it. That is my long and very overdue wrap up. Thank you so much for sticking with me, with my channel, with this long video. And I would love to hear what you guys have been reading and what some of your favorite books of the year so far have been. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the comments. Bye!